Lauren Mitchell had been working on the planet for 8 months. She was a scientist who studied alien animals and plants. The research base sat at the edge of a strange forest made of giant crystal towers. These towers caught the light from 3 moons and made everything glow at night. Lauren was collecting rock samples near the edge of the safe zone when she heard a sound. It was a small, high cry that made her stop walking. The sound came again. It was the kind of noise that hurt animals make when they are scared and in pain. She knew the rules said she should go back to the base right away. The creatures on this planet were dangerous. The military called them Vraken, and they were listed as the most deadly predators in this part of space. They hunted in groups. They could hide so well that you could not see them even when they were close. Many explorers had died meeting them, but Lauren had worked with animals her whole life. That crying sound was something she understood. It did not matter what planet the animal came from. Pain and fear sounded the same everywhere. Her feet moved toward the sound before her brain could tell them to stop. She found the baby Vraken stuck between 2 crystal rocks. Its back leg was caught in a narrow gap. The creature was small, about the size of a house cat. Its fur was dark blue and seemed to glow with its own light. It had 6 eyes, 3 on each side of its head. All 6 eyes were open wide with fear. When the baby saw Lauren, it made a hissing noise and showed its teeth. The teeth were sharp like needles. Lauren got down on her knees slowly. She kept her hands where the creature could see them. She talked in a soft voice, even though she knew the animal could not understand her words. But animals always understood when someone was trying to help or hurt them. The baby hissed again, but Lauren could see it was very tired. It had probably been stuck here for many hours. Its leg looked swollen and hurt. The glowing patterns on its fur were blinking on and off in a strange way. Lauren had read that this meant the Vraken was very stressed. She pulled out her small scanner and looked at the problem. The gap was too narrow. If she just pulled the baby out, she might hurt its leg even more. She would need to make the gap bigger. Lauren took out a small laser cutter from her tool bag. She started cutting away tiny pieces of the crystal very carefully. The baby watched her with all 6 eyes. It stopped hissing. Now it just made small crying sounds. Lauren kept working and kept talking softly to it. Every few minutes she would stop cutting and say something gentle. After 20 minutes of careful work, she made the gap wide enough. She reached in and slowly pulled the hurt leg free. The baby tried to run away as soon as it was free, but its hurt leg could not hold its weight. It started to fall. Lauren caught it without thinking. She held it against her chest. The creature went very still and hard. Lauren thought those sharp teeth were going to bite her throat. She waited for the pain, but the bite never came. Instead, something strange happened. The baby relaxed in her arms. The glowing patterns on its fur started to pulse slowly and steadily. Lauren had read about this in her research books. It was like a cat purring. It meant the Vraken felt safe and happy. Lauren carried the baby back to her workstation. She knew she was breaking many rules. The base commander would be very angry if he found out. He might send her back to Earth, but she could not leave a hurt baby animal alone in the forest. Something bigger might find it and kill it. Her workstation was a small building with 1 room. Inside, she put the baby on her work table and started to fix its leg. The creature stayed calm. It watched her with those 6 intelligent eyes while she put medicine on the swollen leg and wrapped it carefully. Her scanner said nothing was broken. The leg was just badly bruised and strained. When she finished, the baby made a soft chirping sound. It was clearly hungry. Lauren thought about what to feed it. Vraken only ate meat. They could not digest plants or grain. The food paste that everyone at the base ate would not work. She opened her cold storage box and found a package of fake meat. It was grown in a lab but looked and tasted like real beef. The base only had this for special days when people got tired of regular food. She heated a small piece and cut it into tiny bits. The baby's eyes locked onto the meat right away. Its glowing patterns got much brighter. It made excited chirping sounds. When Lauren put a piece of meat on the table, the creature jumped on it fast. It ate like it had not eaten in days. While the baby ate, Lauren made her own dinner. She mixed hot water with dried food that turned into something that was supposed to be pasta. She sat at her desk eating and writing notes on her computer. The baby finished its meat and licked its paws clean with a dark blue tongue. Then it turned to watch her eat. Lauren smiled and held out a small piece of her pasta. The baby sniffed it carefully. Then it took the piece in its mouth and chewed. A second later, it spit the pasta out and made a face that clearly said the food was terrible. Lauren laughed. It was the first time she had really laughed in weeks. The baby seemed to forgive her for offering bad food. It jumped down from the table, keeping weight off its hurt leg. It walked over to her chair. After waiting a moment, it climbed up into her lap and curled into a ball. The glowing patterns on its fur pulsed slowly. That meant it was content. Lauren froze. She barely breathed. This was impossible. The book said Vraken could never be tamed. They said Vraken hated all other species and would attack on sight. But here was a baby Vraken, one of the most feared creatures in the galaxy, sleeping in her lap like a kitten. She knew she should call the other scientists at the main base. This was a chance to learn things no one had ever learned before, but something stopped her. The baby had been hurt and scared and alone. It had trusted her when it had every reason not to. Calling people to study it felt wrong. It felt like breaking a promise, so Lauren just sat there. She gently touched the baby's soft fur. She finished writing her daily reports. The creature was warm. The vibrations from its purring were relaxing. When she finally needed to sleep, she carefully moved the baby to her bed. It immediately took her pillow. Lauren did not try to move it. She lay down next to the baby. She thought she would stay awake all night. She was nervous about sleeping next to a predator, but the steady pulsing of the creature's glowing fur and the gentle vibrations of its purring made her relaxed. Within minutes, she fell into the deepest sleep she had experienced since coming to this planet. She did not know that by morning her life would change forever. Lauren woke up slowly. Something warm was breathing on her face. She opened her eyes and found herself looking at a huge Vraken. This was not the baby. This was a full-grown adult. It was twice her size. Its jaws could crush her skull like an egg. Its 6 eyes stared right into hers. Every part of her brain screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But Lauren knew that any fast movement would probably be the last thing she ever did, so she stayed very still. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might break her ribs. The big Vraken looked at her for a long time. It seemed to be thinking. Then it opened its mouth. Lauren waited for those huge teeth to bite. Instead, the creature made a low, deep sound. It was not a growl. It was something else. It almost sounded like talking. The baby, still on her pillow, chirped back. The adult turned its head to look at the little one. Lauren saw the big Vraken's eyes move to the bandage on the baby's leg. When it looked back at Lauren, something in its face had changed. Very slowly, Lauren reached out her hand. She put it on the baby's head and petted its fur gently. The baby made that happy purring sound. Its glow patterns pulsed bright and steady. The adult watched this. It seemed surprised. Then the big Vraken did something that made Lauren's heart almost stop. It lowered its huge head. It pushed its head against her other hand. Lauren understood. This was the baby's parent. It was saying thank you. She slowly moved her hand to touch the adult's fur. It was rougher than the baby's fur, but just as warm. The creature's glow patterns started to pulse. They matched the rhythm of the baby's patterns. That deep rumbling sound came again. Lauren realized it was their version of purring. A noise outside made them both turn. Lauren looked through her window. In the early morning light, she could see more shapes moving. More Vraken, many more. The whole pack had come for their lost baby. Fear hit Lauren like a wave. She was alone in a small room with deadly predators outside. But the adult next to her did not act aggressive. It walked to the door and looked back at her. Lauren did not know why, but she followed it. She walked to the door. Her hands shook as she reached for the handle. She opened the door slowly. Outside, the 3 moons were setting. In their pale light stood 6 more adult Vraken. The pack. They all looked at her with their 6 eyes, their heads tilted to one side. Lauren had started to learn that this meant they were curious, not angry. The baby limped out the door. It chirped excitedly. All the adults surrounded it right away. They checked it all over. Their glow patterns were flashing fast. Lauren thought they might be talking to each other with the lights. Then one by one, each adult came to Lauren. Each one pressed its head against her, just like the first one had done. Lauren stood perfectly still. Her scientific mind was recording everything, even though her body wanted to run away. But nothing bad happened. Each creature made that deep rumbling purr sound. Each one seemed to be thanking her. When the last one finished, Lauren thought they would leave. She thought they would take their baby and go back to the forest. Instead, the pack settled down around her small building. They arranged themselves in a circle. The baby limped back to Lauren. It pressed against her leg and looked up at her with trust in all 6 eyes. Lauren stood there, surrounded by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. She realized something important had just happened. She had not just saved a baby animal. She had been accepted. They saw her as one of them now. The next few weeks were strange and wonderful. The Vraken pack did not leave. They made Lauren's area their home. She found herself living among them. She gave the baby a name. She called it Nova because its glow patterns flared like a star when it was happy. Nova got better quickly. Within days it was running and jumping everywhere, but it always came back to Lauren. Every evening it would return to sleep in her room. It still took her pillow every single night. The adult Vraken kept their distance at first but were always nearby. Lauren started to tell them apart. The biggest one seemed to be the leader. She named him Titanium because he was so strong and solid. There was a smaller, faster one she called Swift. This one often brought Lauren gifts, pretty crystal rocks that caught the light. Another Vraken watched Lauren with special interest. This one seemed to study everything Lauren did. She tilted her head whenever Lauren spoke. Lauren named her Sage because she seemed wise. Sage reminded Lauren of a scientist, always observing and learning. Lauren wrote down everything she saw. She filled her computer files with notes about the Vraken. They were not mindless beasts like everyone thought. They were smart. They were social. They solved problems. Their glow patterns were not just for hiding. They were for talking. The patterns showed feelings and ideas. Even more surprising, the Vraken were teaching Lauren. When she worked too long without eating, Titanium would bring her food. It was always fresh meat from their hunts. When she walked too far into dangerous areas, Swift would appear and lead her back to safety. When she felt stressed about her work, Sage would sit next to her. The calm, steady pulse of Sage's glow patterns always made Lauren feel better. 3 weeks after the pack arrived, Lauren made a big discovery. She had been studying the glow patterns, trying to understand what they meant. She thought she had found the pattern for danger. She built a small machine that could make light patterns. She wanted to test if she was right. Nova watched closely as Lauren worked. When Lauren turned on her machine, it flashed the lights she thought meant danger. Every adult Vraken nearby suddenly stood up. Their own patterns started flashing in response. They were reacting to her signal, but then Sage came over to the machine. She looked at it carefully. Then Sage's own glow patterns began to flash in a slow, clear sequence. Lauren recorded it quickly. She spent hours studying what Sage had shown her. Finally, she understood. Sage had not been fixing her danger signal. Sage had been teaching her a new pattern. This pattern did not mean danger. It meant question. Sage was asking Lauren what she was trying to do. Sage was trying to talk to her. Lauren's hands shook with excitement. She changed her machine to make new patterns. She created what she hoped meant understanding. Sage answered with a pattern Lauren had seen before but never decoded. It meant approval. It meant yes. Over the next days, Lauren and Sage had lessons. The Vraken taught Lauren their light patterns. Lauren taught Sage human words. It was slow work. It was hard work. But both of them learned quickly. They both wanted to understand each other. The other Vraken watched these lessons with interest. Soon all of them joined in their own way. Titanium would show Lauren how they hunted. Then he would wait while Lauren wrote notes about it. Swift brought Lauren samples from faraway parts of the forest. It was like Swift understood that Lauren needed these things for her research. But Nova made the biggest breakthrough. One evening, Lauren was sitting and writing her notes like always. Nova climbed into her lap as usual. But this time, instead of just curling up to sleep, Nova looked up at her. The young Vraken made a pattern with its glow that Lauren had never seen before. Lauren checked her translation machine. Her heart started beating fast. This was a new pattern. Nova had not used any of the common signals they had been learning. The baby had created something new. It combined pieces of several different patterns. Lauren studied the pattern for a long time. Then she understood what it meant. It meant pack bond human. Nova was not just showing love. The baby was saying that Lauren was family. Lauren was part of the pack now. She belonged with them, and they belonged with her. The situation stayed hidden from the main base for almost a month. Lauren's workstation was far from the central compound. She only had to check in by radio once a day. As long as she sent her regular reports, no one came to visit her. But secrets like this could not stay hidden forever. A supply ship came to drop off equipment at different research stations around the planet. When the pilot flew over Lauren's area, He saw something that made him panic. A whole pack of Vraken surrounded one of their buildings. He immediately called the main base with an emergency alert. Commander Gregory Hammond led the rescue team himself. He brought 6 armed security guards. They flew to Lauren's station expecting the worst. They thought they would find her body. Or maybe they would find nothing at all. Vraken usually did not leave evidence behind. What Hammond found instead made him stop and stare. Lauren was sitting outside her building in the morning sun. She was surrounded by Vraken. Nova was asleep in her lap. Sage sat next to her, head tilted listening as Lauren explained something about their communication system. The other adults lay nearby in relaxed positions. The security team did not know what to do. They raised their weapons. They aimed at the Vraken, but they did not shoot. They were too confused by what they were seeing. Hammond stared with his mouth open. This was impossible. Humans did not sit peacefully with Vraken. Vraken killed humans. Everyone knew that. Hammond finally found his voice. He ordered Lauren to come back to the main base right away. His voice was sharp and commanding. Lauren looked up at him calmly. She said no. She explained that leaving now would hurt the Vraken. They would think she was rejecting them. That could undo all the trust they had built. Hammond's face turned red with anger. He said he would remove her by force if necessary. He could not leave one of his scientists living with dangerous predators. It was against every rule and safety protocol. That was when Titanium stood up. The huge Vraken moved between Lauren and the security team. His glow patterns flashed in a way that Lauren had learned meant protection. The other adults stood up too. They formed a half circle around Lauren. They were not attacking, but they were making their position clear. They would not let anyone take her. The security team gripped their weapons tighter. Fingers moved to triggers. The situation was about to turn deadly. Lauren jumped up quickly. She put herself between the two groups. Nova fell out of her lap but quickly recovered and stood beside her, chirping with alarm. Lauren pulled out her translation device. She made it flash a pattern that meant peace and safety. The Vraken responded immediately. Their aggressive patterns changed to calm ones. They did not move away from Lauren, but they stopped looking like they were about to attack. Hammond watched this happen. His expression changed from anger to shock to something like wonder. He asked Lauren what she had just done. How had she made them calm down? How was she talking to them? Lauren took a deep breath and started to explain. For the next hour, Lauren showed Hammond everything she had learned. She demonstrated the communication system. She showed him her research notes. She explained how the Vraken were not mindless beasts. They were intelligent. They had language. They had feelings and thoughts and social structures. She told him the whole story. How she found Nova hurt and trapped. How she helped the baby and fed it. How the pack came and accepted her. How they had been living together and learning from each other. She showed him weeks of careful observations and data. Hammond listened to all of it. He looked at the Vraken with new eyes. He watched how they moved, how they communicated with their glow patterns, how they interacted with Lauren with obvious trust and even affection. He was a military man, not a scientist, but he could see that something remarkable was happening here. Finally, Hammond made a decision. He contacted the fleet headquarters immediately. He told them that they had made first contact with an intelligent alien species. He requested immediate support from the Xenology department. He asked for more scientists and resources. This was too important to keep quiet. The response from headquarters was fast. Within 3 days, ships started arriving. Scientists came from all over this sector of space. Everyone wanted to observe and study. But they quickly learned that the Vraken would not tolerate being treated like lab animals. Any scientist who approached without respect got clear warning displays from the pack. Lauren became the bridge between the two species. She was the only human the pack fully trusted. She had to approve every person who wanted to come close. She had to teach the new scientists how to approach the Vraken properly, how to read their signals, how to show respect. With Sage's help, Lauren built a better translation system. It was not perfect. There were still many things the two species could not communicate. But it was enough for basic understanding, and what they learned changed everything. The Vraken had their own name for themselves. They called themselves the Illuminated Ones. The name came from their ability to make light. They did not think of it as just communication. To them, the light was art, it was history, it was poetry. Their glow patterns could tell stories that had been passed down for hundreds of generations. They had culture. They had traditions. In the crystal forests, they created temporary light sculptures that were more beautiful than anything humans had made. These sculptures told stories of their history. Stories of great hunts. Stories of lost loved ones. Stories of joy and sorrow and hope. The scientists realized they had made a terrible mistake. For years, humans and other spacefaring species had treated the Vraken as animals. They had shot at them. They had driven them from their lands. They had never tried to communicate. They had never shown any kindness or respect. Of course, the Vraken had fought back. Of course, they had been hostile. Every encounter with other species had started with aggression. Ships entering their space without permission. Colonies built on their hunting grounds. Hunters coming for trophy kills. The Vraken had only been defending themselves and their families. Lauren had done something simple but profound. She had helped a baby in pain. She had shared food with no expectation of reward. She had treated the Vraken as beings worthy of kindness and respect. And they had responded with trust and acceptance. They had claimed her as family because she had shown them the most basic form of decency. The news spread through the galaxy. The military classification of the Vraken changed immediately. They were no longer listed as dangerous animals. They were recognized as a sentient civilization. All the territories marked for human colonization were redesignated as protected cultural zones. Trade talks began. The Vraken had much to offer. Their crystal forests produced unique formations that had applications in technology. They knew about medicinal plants that could cure diseases humans had been fighting for decades. In exchange, they wanted technology and knowledge. They wanted to learn about the galaxy beyond their world. 6 months after Lauren found Nova in the crystal rocks, the first official embassy opened. It was built at the edge of the forest where Lauren had her workstation. The building was designed by both humans and Vraken working together. It had spaces for both species. It had translation systems built into the walls. No one was surprised when Lauren was named as the first human ambassador to the Illuminated Ones. She knew their language better than anyone. She understood their culture. Most importantly, she had their trust. And trust, everyone was learning, was the foundation of everything. But despite her new official position, Lauren never left her pack. She continued to live among them. She learned their ways as they learned hers. Nova grew bigger and stronger, but the bond they formed that first night never weakened. The young Vraken would still curl up next to Lauren every evening, glow patterns pulsing with contentment. And every night, surrounded by her pack under 3 moons, Lauren thought about that moment when she heard a small cry of pain and chose to help instead of walk away. That one choice had changed her life. It had changed the future of 2 species. It had proven that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is show kindness to someone who is afraid. The embassy became a place of constant activity and discovery. Every day brought new understanding between humans and the Illuminated Ones. But the most important work was not happening in meetings or laboratories. It was happening in the daily lives of those who chose to build bridges between the 2 species. Lauren watched as more humans followed her example. A young engineer named Kate befriended a different pack that lived near the Southern Research Station. Kate had been repairing a water collector when she noticed a young Vraken watching her work. Instead of chasing it away, she showed the curious creature what she was doing. Soon the whole pack was helping her identify underground water sources using their superior senses. A medical doctor named Paul started treating injured Vraken who came to the embassy. At first, he only saw wounds from accidents or fights with other predators, but as trust grew, Vraken began bringing their sick and elderly to him. Paul learned their biology. He developed medicines that worked for their unique chemistry. The Vraken, in turn, showed him plants from the forest that had powerful healing properties humans had never discovered. The success stories spread. Within a year, small communities of humans were living alongside Vraken packs across the planet. Each community developed its own unique relationship. Some focused on agriculture, learning which crops grew best with Vraken help. Others studied the crystal forest together, discovering that the formations were actually living organisms that the Vraken had been protecting for generations. But not everything was smooth. There were misunderstandings. There were accidents. Once a young human child got too close to a Vraken nest during breeding season. The protective parents nearly attacked before Lauren arrived and calmed everyone down. After that, both species worked together to create clear guidelines about boundaries and sensitive times. There was also resistance from some humans who could not accept the Fraken as equals. A group of colonists from a nearby system arrived wanting to settle land that belonged to a Vraken territory. They refused to accept the new classifications. They said the land was wasted on animals. They tried to build there anyway. The local Vraken pack responded with clear warnings. They created intimidating light displays. They surrounded the construction equipment. But they did not attack. They had learned from Lauren and others that humans could be reasoned with. They waited for the proper authorities to intervene. Hammond, now promoted to regional commander, arrived with security forces. He ordered the colonists to leave immediately. When they protested, he showed them recordings of Vraken art and culture. He showed them evidence of complex mathematics in their architecture. He made it clear that anyone who violated Vraken territory would face serious criminal charges. The colonists left, angry but compliant. The incident became famous throughout human space. It sent a clear message. The days of treating inhabited worlds as empty territory were over. Sentient beings had rights, regardless of how different they seemed from humans. Meanwhile, the cultural exchange deepened. Vraken artists began creating light sculptures specifically for human audiences. They learned what humans found beautiful and incorporated those elements. Human artists tried to learn the Vraken style, though they had to use technology rather than their own bodies to create the light patterns. The first joint art exhibition was held at the embassy. Humans came from across the sector to see it. They watched in wonder as Vraken created flowing patterns of light that told stories older than human space travel. They saw sculptures that captured emotions so perfectly that many viewers cried. The exhibition proved that beauty and meaning could transcend species barriers. Nova grew into a strong adult during this time. The young Vraken that Lauren had saved was now almost as big as titanium. But despite the size and strength, Nova remained gentle with Lauren. Every evening, without fail, Nova would find Lauren and settle beside her. The bond they shared was famous now. Children across human space learned about the scientist and the Vraken cub in their schools. Lauren's original pack became something like ambassadors themselves. They were patient with new humans who came to learn. They demonstrated their culture willingly. Sage, in particular, seemed to enjoy teaching. The wise Vraken spent hours helping human linguists understand the nuances of lightspeak. She corrected their attempts with patience that surprised everyone. Titanium took on a different role. He worked with human security forces to establish protocols for safety. He showed them how to read Vraken body language. He taught them the difference between a warning display and an actual threat. He helped create a system where both species could feel safe around each other. Swift became a guide for human explorers. The fast Vraken knew the crystal forests better than anyone. She led scientific expeditions to discover new species of plants and understand the ecosystem. She showed humans secret places of great beauty, waterfalls that glowed with bioluminescent algae, caves filled with singing crystals that resonated with specific frequencies. The relationship between species evolved in ways no one had predicted. Vraken began visiting human settlements out of curiosity. They wanted to see human technology. They wanted to taste human food, though most of it disagreed with their digestion. They wanted to understand how humans lived when they were not in the forest. Humans, in turn, were invited to join Vraken hunts, not to kill but to observe and participate in the strategy. They learned that Vraken hunts were not mindless violence. They were carefully planned operations that showed respect for the prey. The Vraken took only what they needed. They used every part of what they killed. They thanked the spirits of the animals they hunted. Religious and philosophical discussions began. The Vraken had their own beliefs about the universe and their place in it. They believed that all light came from the same source, that every being that could create or appreciate beauty was connected. Human philosophers found parallels with their own traditions. They discovered that questions about meaning and purpose were universal. Children of both species began playing together. Young Vraken would chase human children in games of tag. Human children would try to mimic the light patterns, using flashlights and colored filters. The games were clumsy at first, with many misunderstandings. But children were more flexible than adults. They adapted quickly to each other's ways. Scientists began studying the long-term effects of this cooperation. They documented improved mental health among humans who lived near Vraken packs. The presence of the illuminated ones seemed to reduce stress and anxiety. Their calm, rhythmic light patterns had a soothing effect on human nervous systems. The Vraken benefited too. Human medicine had saved many Vraken lives. Human technology helped them communicate over long distances, allowing separated packs to stay in contact. Human agriculture meant they no longer faced starvation during harsh seasons. The relationship was truly mutual. 2 years after Lauren found Nova, the Galactic Council officially recognized the Illuminated Ones as a member species. They were granted a seat at the council, and all the rights that came with it. The Vraken chose Sage to be their first representative. It was a natural choice. Sage had always been interested in understanding other species. Lauren accompanied Sage to the first council meeting. She watched with pride as the Vraken diplomat communicated through a sophisticated translation system. Sage spoke about the importance of approaching differences with curiosity rather than fear. She spoke about the value of patience and respect. She reminded the council that every species had wisdom to share if others would only listen. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It became one of the most watched transmissions in history. Billions of beings from hundreds of species saw a Vraken, once thought to be a mindless beast, speaking with eloquence and wisdom about cooperation and peace. After the council meeting, Lauren and Sage returned to the Crystal Forest. They returned to the pack that had become family. Nova greeted them with excited chirps and bright flashing patterns. Titanium nodded his massive head in approval. Swift brought them a particularly beautiful crystal as a welcome home gift. That night, under 3 moons, the whole pack gathered for a celebration. They created a light sculpture together, all of them contributing their glow patterns. It told the story of a lost cub, a kind human, and the friendship that changed the galaxy. It was beautiful. It was true. And it reminded everyone that the smallest acts of kindness could have the biggest consequences. 5 years passed since the day Lauren found Nova trapped in the crystal rocks. The planet had transformed from a lonely research outpost into a thriving center of interspecies cooperation. More humans arrived each month, not as colonists claiming empty land, but as students wanting to learn from the illuminated ones. Universities from across human space established branches here. They taught courses in Vraken culture, language, and philosophy. Young humans studied alongside young Vraken, learning from each other. The first generation of truly bilingual individuals was growing up, equally comfortable with human speech and light patterns. Lauren's work had evolved beyond anyone's expectations. She was no longer just an ambassador. She had become the director of the Institute for Interspecies Understanding. Her research papers were required reading for anyone studying first contact protocols. Her methods, which she always insisted were just basic kindness and respect, had been adopted across the galaxy. The phenomenon became known officially as the Mitchell approach. But Lauren hated that name. She always told people it was not about her. It was about recognizing that intelligence and consciousness came in many forms. It was about putting aside fear and prejudice to see the individual behind the differences. The success with the Vraken inspired similar efforts elsewhere. On distant worlds, humans and other species began approaching previously hostile aliens with patience and respect instead of weapons. Not every attempt succeeded. Some species truly were incompatible with others due to biology or fundamental differences in thinking. But many former enemies became friends once communication was established. Nova had fully matured into a magnificent adult Vraken. She was large and powerful, with glow patterns that were unusually bright and complex. Other Vraken often came to watch her create light sculptures. She had a talent for art that was rare even among her kind. But despite her fame and status, Nova never strayed far from Lauren. The bond between them had become legendary. Students traveled from across the galaxy just to observe them together. Scientists studied their relationship, trying to understand the deep connection that had formed. But what they found was simple. It was love. Not romantic love, but the deep familial love between individuals who had saved each other in fundamental ways. Lauren's original pack had grown over the years. Titanium had taken a mate and they had their own cubs now. Swift had become the fastest hunter on the planet, legendary even among other Vraken packs. Sage had retired from her position at the Galactic Council, but continued teaching at the Institute. All of them still gathered with Lauren regularly, maintaining the pack bonds that had formed that first morning. On the 5th anniversary of First Contact, a grand celebration was planned. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy were invited. The Galactic Council had declared it Interspecies Harmony Day. The main event would be held in the Crystal Forest, at the exact spot where Lauren had found Nova. Thousands attended. Humans, Vraken, and dozens of other species gathered in the forest. Translation devices allowed everyone to communicate. Food from 100 worlds was shared. Music and light sculptures filled the air. It was chaotic and beautiful and unlike anything that had happened before in galactic history. Lauren was asked to give a speech. She stood on a natural stage formed by crystal formations, looking out at the diverse crowd. Nova stood beside her, as always. Lauren spoke simply the way she always did. She told the story one more time. How she heard a cry for help. How she chose to respond with kindness. How that simple choice had changed everything. She talked about the moment the pack accepted her. How she realized that family was not about biology or species. It was about who you chose to protect, to care for, to stand beside. She spoke about Nova growing up and the joy of watching someone you helped become strong and confident and happy. Then she said something that would be quoted for generations. She said that every person had the power to change the galaxy, not through grand gestures or heroic actions, though those had their place, but through small, everyday choices to be kind rather than cruel, to be curious rather than fearful, to see the person rather than the difference. When she finished, Nova created a light sculpture. It was the most complex and beautiful pattern the young Vraken had ever made. It showed the story from her perspective. The pain of being trapped. The fear when a strange creature approached. The moment when fear turned to trust. The growing love and security of being part of a pack that included this odd, gentle human. The sculpture brought many to tears. It was so honest and emotional that even species who normally did not cry found themselves affected. It reminded everyone that beneath all the physical differences, sentient beings shared the same basic needs: safety, family, love, purpose, understanding. After the ceremony, Lauren walked through the forest with her pack. They moved away from the crowds to a quiet place they had claimed as their own years ago. A small clearing where the crystal formations created a natural shelter. This was where they came when they needed peace. They settled into their usual positions. Nova curled against Lauren's side. Sage lay nearby, her glow patterns pulsing with contentment. Titanium took his protective position at the edge of the clearing. Swift brought fresh water from a nearby stream. The cubs, curious and playful, tumbled around them all. Lauren looked around at her family. They were so different from her in almost every way. Different bodies, different languages, different instincts and needs. But none of that mattered. They were pack. They were family. They belonged together. She thought about all the changes that had happened. The embassy, the institute, the students and scientists, the trade agreements and cultural exchanges, the seats at the Galactic Council. All of it had started with one moment, one choice, one act of simple kindness toward a creature in pain. Lauren often wondered what would have happened if she had followed protocol that day. If she had walked away from the crying sound. If she had left Nova trapped and alone. The Vraken would still be classified as monsters. Humans would still be settling on their lands. The two species would still be enemies. All that potential for friendship and cooperation would have been lost. But she had not walked away. She had stopped. She had listened. She had helped. And because of that, everything was different. Not perfect, because nothing ever was. There were still problems to solve, misunderstandings to clear up, prejudices to overcome. But there was also hope. There was friendship. There was proof that different species could not just coexist but truly thrive together. Nova shifted against her side, making that soft, purring sound that Lauren had first heard 5 years ago. Lauren stroked the Vraken's fur, feeling the warmth and the gentle vibrations. She thought about the scared, hurt baby she had found, and she looked at the strong, talented, beloved adult that baby had become. This was the real reward for everything she had done. Not the fame or the awards or the institute named after her. It was this. These quiet moments with her pack, the absolute trust and love they shared, the knowledge that she had been accepted by beings who owed her nothing but gave her everything. As the 3 moons rose over the crystal forest, the pack settled in for the night. their glow patterns synchronized, pulsing in harmony. It was a sight Lauren never tired of, a visual representation of their connection, a family of different species, different origins, different natures, all linked by choice and love. Lauren closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of the forest, the gentle humming of the crystals, the soft breathing of her pack, the distant calls of other creatures going about their lives. This was home. Not Earth, where she had been born, not the research station where she worked, but here in this clearing, surrounded by beings who had claimed her as one of their own. She had come to this planet as a scientist studying alien life. She had expected to spend her time collecting data and writing reports. She had never imagined she would find a family. She had never dreamed that one small act of compassion would ripple outward to touch the entire galaxy. But that was the thing about kindness. You never knew where it would lead. You never knew whose life you might change. You never knew what doors might open because you chose to help instead of hurt, to understand instead of fear, to love instead of hate. Lauren had shared a meal with a predator cub. By morning, the pack had claimed her as one of their own, and in doing so, they had all claimed a future that no one had thought possible, a future where different beings could look past their differences and see each other, really see each other, and recognize that beneath it all they were not so different after all. That was the real lesson. That was the truth that would echo through the ages. Every person, regardless of species or origin, had the capacity for kindness, and kindness, more than any weapon or technology, had the power to change worlds.